Continuing on with chapter 4, social development. So we talked about coming into the world, childhood development, a little bit of adolescence, puberty. So we're going to move forward, talk about identity and some of the facets and how we mature throughout the lifespan. All right, so I think we left off here forming an identity. Right? So it says a little bit of nature and nurture, but it's a little bit of social context, environmental, where you grew up, where people you surround yourself with, where you go to school, what kind of social class were you in, all of these different things. Defining an identity is one of the hardest things, challenging things to go through. Because people who are able to know thyself, know yourself, early on have a bigger advantage in having successful relationships as adults. People who struggle to find themselves because, for whatever reason, partially because of denying some of the realities about who they are, will ultimately struggle with other people because they say they're still wearing that shadow. Carl Jung said, right? They haven't been able to take that fake face off, right? And just really be who they are deep down inside, which ultimately will help you build sustainable relationships. Then we have group identity, right? Group identity is an interesting one because it deals with in and out group. In and out group theory talks about how we are biased, and prejudiced, and racist, and hateful, and spiteful to people who are not in our group. In our group means any group we feel that we belong to as a member, right? So you say, well, it's a membership. Membership, you need a subscription to a membership. Do you subscribe to that? Do you subscribe to your culture? Do you subscribe to your race? Do you subscribe to your religion? Do you subscribe to anything that society has constructed to classify human beings and say these are the columns in which you exist? And you say, yeah, I do subscribe. I do all this stuff. I agree. Right? So for the people who are in group, you tend to give them more leniency or empathy, right, than people who are not in your group. Right? You become tribalistic. Same crime committed by somebody who you is in your group or out your group, you're going to treat them different. You'll get the pass. You're like, oh, okay. This person was going through something. But then the same person on the opposite, in the out group, commit the same crime, you're like, oh, crucify them, right? So we tend to have these innate biases. We use them all the time. They're not just like racial or anything like that. You know, it could be short people, long hair, people with tattoos, right? They treat them differently. Because if we subscribe and believe, right? It's all about what you believe. You only got a couple seconds when you meet somebody to form like value judgments against them. And thus you may find yourself stereotyping people. Like, oh, I expected you to be like this. You proved me right, you were like that. Or you proved me wrong. You're completely different than what I expected. Based on what I saw on the news, social media, what I see, right? We place all these assumptions on the people. But very simple. You're either in our group or you're out. In and out. It's like teams, right? You want your team to win. You support them no matter what. No matter anything they do, you still support it. Right? You're Republican, no matter anything bad, you'll keep supporting. Democrat, no matter what bad thing happened, you keep supporting. You've subscribed to the membership, and you say, yeah, okay, I'm a team player. So group identity. Who are you in a group setting? right? And that reflects to what social identity. Social identity is all the larger ones, right? Society will describe you as black, white, Hispanic, female, male, poor, rich, educated, uneducated, all these different things. Right? And then we're going to talk about how it relates to intimacy. At some point in your life, you're going to have to, you're not going to have to, but at some point in life, you will probably have some romantic relationships. You may want to start a family, you may want to get married, right? You want to have meaningful, long-lasting relationships. Or you may not want to have them. You may want to have just casual relationships for the rest of your life. But even if you're casual, there's still some form of intimacy there, right? So how all of these identities shape our future relationships with people, or even our current relationships. All right, parent and peer relationships, right? So we talked about how, okay, you're a teenager and now you're getting most of your information or influence from people your age, right? Like I've listened to my mom and dad long enough. Thanks, but I'm kind of more interested in what they're talking about. Right? The social forces, social proof. In which case that tends to drive us to be a certain way. Let's see. Parent-child arguments, those are big in teenage years, right? Because we think that parents don't understand us because of either we think there's some sort of generational gap and they just completely don't understand. And so we do things in secrecy thinking that our parents would never did that, never have. There's a huge disconnect because we're still new to some of the things that we're doing, and we think may think they're taboo or bad, but we fail to realize that we all kind of share the same stuff growing up, right? The same activities. We either partake in those activities or we don't partake in them. So it leads to a lot of arguments around teenage years, lots and lots. And kids are skipping school, not telling their parents, leaving, staying out late, lying about where they are, et cetera, et cetera. It's all to sort of mask and hide the innocence that we think our parents view us as, right? These innocent beings. And to blame or not to blame. We'll come back to that. Emerging adulthood, is it a developmental stage? Yes, it is. The text, we don't really need the text to confirm that, right? We just kind of know from ourselves, you guys are emerging into adulthood. Maybe you're not old enough to drink, right? But that's just a legal thing. That's not necessarily means that you're not an adult, right? In reality, you're over 18, so you are adults. But you're probably adults in other ways too, right? Because those are just law. We say the law is great, but it doesn't really define everything, because we say people can have children at 11 years old, right? So the law is one thing, nature is another. So your nature really gives you some sort of adulthood, whether you're mature or not. We talked about during this period of time, you become very athletic, right? You may be sort of the apex of how far you can run, how like weightlifting, athletic things, flexibility, muscular strength, reaction time. Your sensories are very, very high, right? So here's probably when you're at your top of your game, most likely, for like say physical activities. As we get older, okay, this is talking about middle adulthood, right? So these are just changes. These are changes. So middle adulthood would be kind of the opposite. It'd be like, okay, these things will decline. Reaction time, sensory awareness, cardiac output. These things will decline over time. And then you'll decline in fertility as time goes on too, which they call kind of middle age crises people have. you hit a certain point in your life and sort of your mood changes, your behavior changes, because it's a lot of a reflection about your life thus far. So you have a lot of changes physically, and so you have to address those because those are kind of new, right? So now you have sicknesses that kind of last a long time, backache, all sorts of things that are new to you. Because you're like, yeah, I've been pretty young, nothing's really bothered me all this time, and I get all the stuff that's bothering me, right? So mentally it's taxing on you. So you have to address all these things. In which case it can affect relationships with intimate partners. All right, with age, some things are remembered well, reminiscence bumps, which means that at a certain point you start to think about the good times more, right? When you're young, you're doing too much activity to have time to think about the good times as much. Right? When you get older, you start to think about the good times because of all the new changes that are coming around that may not be so good. And so you have sort of a memory bump, right? We'll call it a reminiscence bump. Tip of the tongue forgetting occurs more frequently with age because of the shift in long-term and short-term memory, which means sometimes they can cross wire